People recognize the importance of having a place to keep the community's history and to keep the county's memories. I like to think of this as a place where we are the caretakers of the keepsakes.
I call this museum a living, breathing home. And I get that comment from many, many people when they come through here. They can't put their finger on it. They don't want to mention the word spirits or, something psychic or something like that, but I know what they're getting at. There is a feeling about this house. You feel welcome here. And I hear that over and over. This is a welcoming house. The C.H. Moore Homestead consists of 10 acres. We have the Victorian mansion, which contains our artifacts, our collection of Civil War items, of course our furnishings. We have a carriage barn that is vintage also. It was built in the 1860s. Then we also have a large farm museum consisting of 3 buildings. We have a covered bridge that connects us with our main grounds and then our property that goes to the north of the mansion and to the fairgrounds.
The homestead was built by John and Minerva Bishop in 1867. Minerva was a sister to C.H. Moore. Unfortunately, she and her husband both passed away in the early 1880s. It was at that time Mr. Moore, a wealthy attorney and land speculator, acquired the property. Before moving in, he added the entire west wing.
When you enter the mansion from the south main doors, you enter a vestibule that is unbelievable. You are greeted by a long staircase leading to the second floor. On each side of the hall entrance, you will be greeted by 2 large parlors. One we call the formal parlor, which houses all of the fancy furniture. In the Victorian age, one parlor was usually dedicated to entertaining, to bringing the best feature of your home to the visitors. So you'll get the chandeliers, you'll get the mirrors, you'll get the best settees. And then there's usually an informal parlor on one side of the hall when you come in. We call it the music room. And the focal point of our music room parlor is the Steinway piano.
The piano was purchased by Mr. Moore as a birthday gift for his daughter on her 15th birthday. And as a matter of fact, we know that instead of paying cash for the piano, Mr. Moore actually traded 40 acres of land for that gift. So it was a very precious thing. One of the rooms that we have in the house is actually called the morning room. And it's on the east side of the house, so when the sun would have come up in the morning, it would have been a pleasant place. It's a very feminine room. It was made for the lady of the house, and it's where she would come down in the morning and make her plans for the day, decide maybe what would be served for dinner, assign any certain chores or tasks to the servants, and just kind of plan out the day there in the morning room.
As you go through the hall entrance to your left, you will notice a large dining room. That room is highlighted by a beautiful brocade bordered floor with 5 different woods. It is just unbelievable to think the craftsmanship and the artistry that went into that floor.
Also, the built-in china cupboard, I think, is a nice point of interest. The original velvet lining is still there. Originally, they think that it was maybe mauve or red, but over time it's come to be black, but it's still there. And it's such a big, beautiful thing. I kind of think of it as a jewelry box for china.
You will find your way into the kitchen off of the dining room, one of the largest kitchens you will see in the Victorian era. It is actually larger than the White House kitchen of the same era. So the servants here at the C.H. Moore Homestead had quite a kitchen to work in.
It's one of the areas in the home where we are not interpreting or representing how the wealthy lived, but showing how the maids and the servants and the cooks lived, what it took to run the house.
The other part of the West Wing, besides the kitchen, houses the 2-story library, which is our focal point of the house. Of course, Mr. Moore needed a large library to house his 7,000 volume collection. The first floor library was noted to be the first public library in Clinton unofficially. In fact, he loaned out many of his books to his colleagues. There's one that was recently discovered in our public library that Lincoln borrowed for a time.
I would say of all the other spaces in the home, the library is where you do still feel Mr. Moore's presence. There is something about the room. So many of Mr. Moore's personal items are still there. And you know that since he loved his books so much, that must have been his favorite room, and he must have spent a great deal of time there.
We progress to the second floor, where we have several rooms off of a beautiful hallway that was used as a sitting room. Possibly visiting relatives might use it for their parlor when they were visiting. The first bedroom at the top of the stairs houses we call it the child's room because the original owner, John and Minerva Bishop, had one child, Mary Elizabeth. She never was able to live in the house. She passed away before her second birthday on a family trip to Ohio. And so the museum decided to decorate that room in her honor. So all of the furniture is around for a little girl. There's a very beautiful portrait above the fireplace that was done after her death by a local artist who had a picture of Mary Elizabeth, an actual photograph, and he did the painting from that picture. Down the hall, you will see the Winifred bedroom. We call it that because above that fireplace is a prominent portrait of Winifred Moore, Mr. Moore's daughter. And that painting was done after her death. And the picture that was used for it is also in the house right next to that room.
And then, of course, there's Mr. Moore's bedroom, which is located on the upper level, and it is the only entry that you can take into the upper level of the library. You can just imagine Mr. Moore, walking into the library and finding a good book and nestling in for the night. The maid's room provides another opportunity for one to see what life was like on the other side, not just for the wealthy of the day, but also, someone who would live the life of a servant. The furnishings in there, of course, are more basic. Everything that the maid would have needed is there, the wash basin and the bedding and things like that, but it's certainly a more modest space.
The C.H. Moore Homestead, besides having parlors and dining rooms and libraries, also houses a large collection of local artifacts. The Emmett Kent collection, which ranges from antique firearms to Indian arrowheads to bells. They also have a local display room that we house local artifacts from people who have collections in the area. If we do not find a local collector, then we will put some of our collections in that room as well. We also have farm implements, telephone display, our working blacksmith shop, cars. We have just unlimited items that appeal to just about everyone. The annual Apple and Pork Festival was established originally to help restore this property, but it has evolved into one of the largest festivals in the Midwest that provides not only funds for the DeWitt County Museum, but also for many of the nonprofit groups in DeWitt County.
The house is open for tours. There is an art show on the east lawn. We have a craft tent with demonstrations. There are over 25 food booths, and those food booths represent old-fashioned foods for the most part. And really, it's come to be a homecoming for a lot of people. people who grew up here and have moved away always make a point to come back for the festival. They bring their children and their grandchildren back for the festival. For others that don't have ties to Clinton, I suppose the Apple and Pork Festival has become their one tie to Clinton, because a lot of people who come once do come back, and it's an annual event for them. This museum represents everyone. It represents the wealthy landowner. It represents the tenant farmer. It represents the railroad men, the lady who wore the fancy dress, and the maid who wore the apron. It tells the story of everyone, preserves the heritage of everyone.
The artifacts here are more than just your typical museum artifacts. And I get that comment from many, many people when they come through here who have visited other museums, and they get a feeling when they're in other museums that it's just a place to see. They don't have a connection. But when they're here just for a few minutes, I've heard this over and over, they have a connection to this place. The longer you're here, you have this sense that I could live here. And that to me is why people should come here. Yes, the history is important in the artifacts. We have some very interesting items. Maybe it's the hook that gets them in, the two-story library and the artifacts and the Kent collection. But once they're in here, they kind of forget all that. And I see them sitting down on chairs. People ask me all the time, can we sit down? And I say, if there's not a sign that says, don't sit on me, you can sit down. You have to experience it. So that's why I tell people, come and visit the museum, not just for the look, but for the feel.